I was talking to someone on the phone last night, and I said, it's one thing when you personally have a deal with a crisis, you as an individual, but the rest of the world is fine. It's different because, when you're healed and a good, healthy place, you can kind of just jump back into the race. It's another thing entirely when the whole world or the whole known world is dealing with the same crisis. So, what that says to me is that business as usual has changed. And I know that a lot of people are thinking, well, let's just hurry up and get this thing over with. Let's just flatten the curve. Let's just get that vaccine out there. Let's take whatever we have to take to just stop this so that we can go back to where we were. But I'm sad. I'm not sure. I'm not sad. I'm not going to say I'm sad. I regret to tell you that that won't happen. This is a crisis that has, whether you believe that it's a pandemic or not, the world is at attention. And so life as we know it will change. Okay. That's a given. I was thinking about a few weeks ago when I did a prayer conference call. I did a prayer reimagine call. And one of the days I shared on the call that I was talking to my dad, and I asked him, what was it like for you during World War II? I mean, he was young, he didn't remember much, but he began to share the things that was happening and how life changed. And I thought about that. I really pondered that. And I was thinking, how did the world change after World War II? How? I mean, it changed after World War I, but it really changed after World War II. How? And one of the things that popped in my head immediately was the United Nations was formed, because the end of World War II marked the end of colonization as we knew it. Okay, so some of the smaller, lesser countries now needed a voice. And so in an effort to prevent another war like that, because of that reason, that was initiated. And so many things. And from that came a lot of other I think the World Health Organization, a lot of different organizations started around that time to address problems that were revealed and uncovered as a result of the war. And so I started thinking, what is our world going to look like when we come out of this, on the other side of this? And so I wanted to talk about three areas that will help you to navigate where you are right now and come out on top. Now, I will say I'm not going to cover all of these things in detail because it would take way too long. But what I want to do this week is just give you an overview of these three terms. So retrain, reframe, and reposition. An apostle that I admire, I look up to, he's just an amazing man of God, has really blessed my life on a personal level and a ministerial level. His name is Apostle Jan Nell, and he is originally from Zimbabwe and lived a little bit in South Africa, but now he lives in Thailand. The quote that Apostle Jan Nell used to say all the time, and maybe he still does, he used to say, if you see yourself wrong, then you will prepare wrong and you will work wrong. So in other words, if you don't have a good view of yourself, then you're going to waste a lot of time doing things that aren't going to be helpful. And I'd like to just change that quote a little bit. If you don't see what's going on in this world correctly, if you don't see what's happening behind the scenes and even as it relates to your life and the region that you live in, then you will be ill-equipped to handle or walk through whatever comes next. Now, when he used that word see in that quote, he was talking more than just what we do with our eyes. Okay, yes, we do. We need to have the ability to see. Okay, sight. Yes, he's talking about that, but it's a lot deeper. He's talking about being able to see what is not seen, having a mental vision, being able to discern the times and the seasons that we are in, being able to project and predict and assess in a holistic, healthy manner. Not with anxiety. Okay. Remember, I talked about anxiety about 2 weeks ago. You're welcome to go back to my YouTube channel, The Good Life with Lori. Check that out. That's different. I'm talking about being logical, okay, and dealing with those irrational fears so that you can think logically and analytically and yet still be creative. So you can go from being frustrated to being innovative. So in order to really see what's not seen, in order to have a clear mental vision, I hope you're listening. This requires that you are contemplative. Being contemplative means that you are continually and attentively studying what you have in front of you. Not in a panic mode, like what if this happens or what if that happens and this, that. No, in a very clear and logical way. Please hear me, because you're going to need to know what decisions to make. And if you make a decision that is based out of your raw, unchecked emotions or unfiltered imagination, you're going to make the wrong choice. What we're facing right now has been an abrupt, unwelcomed for change, okay? Like it or not, this happened, okay? For whatever reason. Now we're finding ourselves in a place where we have to embrace transition. I did a weekend seminar on change and transition. I probably should do it again. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see what happens after all this. Obviously, we're not coming together for a seminar anytime soon, but we'll see. It's just to kind of boil it down and just make it really palatable and quick. Change is something that can happen before or after transition or transition. So in other words, it's something that is has moved you from one point to another. Now, sometimes if you know change is coming, you can prepare. I'll give you an example. If you decide you want to buy a house and this is something you want to do as a family or single person, whatever, you're making a decision that will bring you to a point of change. However, because the change is down the road, you can prepare or transition for that occurrence of change when it happens. I'll break it down even further. When you put your house up on the market, or let's just say you're going from one house to another, and you put your house that you're living in on the market, immediately, what do you start doing? You start throwing away things. You start going through your closets. You start packing things that you don't need and putting it in storage. You start looking for your next house. There are all these little things. You start to make peace with the home that you're in. Maybe there's a lot of memories connected to that home, a lot of great times that you've had in that home. So you start to make peace with saying goodbye to that. All of these things that's all called transition, okay? And then the day comes where the change occurs, where boom, you move out. The day you move out, that's the day of change. But everything else leading up to it is transition. Okay, so that's the best way to change. If you're gonna change, let me know what's going on so I can transition beforehand so that when the change comes, I'm ready. This situation that happened to us is the exact opposite. The change came first. It was uninvited. It was unwelcomed. It was unwanted, okay? And now we are in this process of almost like playing catch up to what has happened. And so that is why we have to retrain our mindset. We have to be able to pull things together in a way that will be conducive to how we handle what we see. So part of transition is letting go of and embracing the fact that things are not going to be the way you thought they were going to be. Okay. That's difficult. That's a psychological and emotional reorientation process. It takes time. I know someone who was supposed to get married in May, and they were so excited. That wonderful couple, the sweetest couple you ever want to meet. Wish nothing but the best, praying for their, the best in their life, but no wedding. They're going to still get married, but no wedding right now. So you dealing with this letting go or coming to terms with things that could have been, that maybe should have been, that you planned to do, that did not happen. It's kind of almost like a grieving process, if you will. It creates this this disequilibrium, this unbalance. Like, I remember years ago when I had vertigo, and it has to do with your ears and your balance. And I remember I didn't know what was going on with me. I just remember I was at work and I was sitting in my chair, just straight like I am now, and I went to bend down to pick up something off the floor, and I fell off the chair. like, what happened? I'm like, why am I falling? But it was because my balance was completely off. And this is what's happening now. Our balance, our equilibrium is completely off. And so it creates this response of grief and loss and anxiety. And so some people are going through a grieving process. They have lost loved ones in the midst of this pandemic. They're dealing with a physical loss as well as a loss to whatever plans or hopes or whatever they had for the year or the future. All of these things we're processing, necessary. You have to process this, guys. You have to talk about it. You have to express your feelings. Again, we want to rephrase what we're saying so that we're not giving into fear and giving into fright, but we are expressing a sentiment that we are experiencing so that we can get through it. Okay, again, we're not saying it to open up the door to anxiety or make it bigger or magnify it or give way to fright, but we're rephrasing it so that we can express our feelings, what we're feeling, so that we can process it and walk through it. Okay, so that's a process that we're going through. This is the time to go through that process. This is the time because things have slowed down. And so it's an opportune time to deal with that emotional side of it. And then there's this gray area where you're trying to figure out, okay, now what? It's like the hallway of life. You're not in either room. There's a room on the left, the room that you left or exited, and then the room on the right that you need to enter into. And now you're in the hallway, which is nowhere. It's nowhere. You can't go back to the left because that door is shut and barred tight. But then the door to the right is kind of unsure too. You're in that gray area. Okay. And then there's that process when you finally move through that to the new beginning, to coming to terms with what has happened. Okay, not accepting defeat, because remember, we're not victims, we are victors. Not accepting defeat, but accepting the situation at hand for what it is. Okay, and then learning how to become re-inspired so that your morale can go back up, so that you will be willing to build again. Now that area, that stage of embracing the new beginning is really connected to your why. Your purpose is eternal. Listen to me. Your purpose is eternal. I don't care what happens. That will not change. Never. It is eternal. Let me give you a little secret. Your purpose existed before you did. Isn't that powerful? Your purpose existed before you did. Before you breathed a breath of oxygen, your purpose existed. In fact, God created you with your purpose in mind. Think about it like this. If an architect is designing a building and he or she is commissioned to design a building, the architect wants to understand, what is this building for? Is this a house? Is it a business? Is it a commercial property? Is it a warehouse? Is it a research and development lab? What type of building is this going to be? What purpose does it serve? Once they understand that, then they design everything. Everything about that building is to facilitate the purpose. That's how God designed you. In Psalm 139, it says that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. You were knitted together in the darkness of your mother's womb with your purpose in mind. Okay. God said, I have this thing that I want to happen. I have this thing that I want to see. Let me form someone that I can then give the traits and characteristics and abilities to do that very thing. Okay, so we understand now our purpose is eternal. That does not change. So your why does not change. Holding on to that will help you have the ability to become re-inspired and self-motivated, and it will keep your morale up so that you'll be willing to rebuild again. Knowing your why, knowing your purpose is key to being able to rebuild again. And rebuilding starts with the ability to retrain. I want you to understand that when you are retraining your mind, because we're talking about your mindset, you need to assess your skills. What are your current skills? Okay. Now this is going to take time because you don't want to rush through this. You want to look at what are things that you know how to do well? What are your talents? What are your abilities? You want to assess all of that. Then you want to look at what new skills you believe you might need going forward. So retraining, you get to that point after you've dealt with the change that has occurred, the transition that is needed to adjust to or reorient you to what happened, to get your balance back, to get your equilibrium back, and then the embracing of building again based on your why, based on your purpose. Then you can train again. Then you can build again. Then you can move forward again because you've restored that balance that was once shaky. Next broadcast, we're going to talk about reframing. Now that we've talked about the retraining piece, we're going to talk about reframing and how that will look in the days ahead. Remember now, you want to go from being frustrated to being innovative, and you do that by renewing your mind, by embracing what has happened, not accepting it. Now, again, we're not defeated, but just accepting the reality of the world that we have or the world that we live in now, and making a conscious effort to reevaluate and reassess and reorient yourself into this new reality, and then continuing to build your best and blessed life in spite of it. Okay, you can still have your best and blessed life. You just have to go about it differently. Again, you're not a victim. You are a victor. And that's the standpoint that you have to think from so that you can continue to be creative and productive and come out of this on the other side, not just as someone who is surviving, but someone who is thriving. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.